the more research I do on real estate, the more I'm starting to feel that we're gonna have a real estate crash. Although I see many reasons why maybe we won't have a crash, the evidence is just mounting on the side of a crash coming. And you want to know, when is it going to come? You know, who knows, right? No one can predict that. No one can tell you when a crash is actually going to happen. Hey, and real quick, before I tell you about the market crash that's upcoming, please in the comments just write the word crash if you think we're going to crash, or the word boom if you think our real estate market is going to boom. But here's what we can tell you is that real estate is cyclical. Not only is it cyclical on a month basis, meaning, you know, in the winter months there's less sales than in the spring and summer months, which is not the case in Florida where I'm at, but overall it is cyclical in a 16-year cycle of appreciation followed by a 4-year cycle of prices being cut and dropping. Now, a gentleman named Fred Harrison developed a system, and he basically has found that our next cycle of the crash beginning is going to be in 2026. Why 2026? Look, I don't know all the info, but what I do know is that it sounds about right. We still have price appreciating in 2023. 2024, it's still going up. We're in July right now, July 10th, I believe. It's still going up. So what is it going to look like in December 2024? And what about when a new president gets sworn in, you know, on January 1st, 2025? Quite frankly, I think it's going to start turning, and eventually prices will come down. But the thing is, right when the president comes in, I think there's going to be a lot of excitement because there's going to be some new energy, and that is assuming that Biden doesn't rerun and he doesn't win, or, you know, at least someone else wins, right? But that's a different conversation altogether. We really have to look at how people behave. And, you know, humans like to be excited about new things. That's just like a normal human trait. So when a new president is going to be announced, if a new president is going to be announced, people are going to get excited, and some of them are going to go out and buy real estate, okay? And some of them are going to kind of wait on the sidelines like what's happening right now, because our interest rate, just reported yesterday, is 7.00%, and that is the average rate for residential loans, you know, in the past week. So that's a high rate compared to what we've had over the last, you know, decade or two, right? The last time we had 7% interest rates, I believe, was when I bought my first property in 2002, 22 years ago. And you see, inflation is a big contributing factor to interest rates. And interest rates are the biggest contributing factor to people buying real estate. And right now, we're not seeing much improvement in the inflation rate. And we're not seeing any improvement in the rate cuts. That's not happening. Our rates have been at 7% for over half a year. And it's gonna take rate cuts before people start buying. But if these rates stay high, our prices will come down a little bit. But I think it's going to be another 2025 needs to go through before we start seeing big price reductions. And that's because real estate is a really lagging thing. Real estate takes forever to react to news, okay? Unlike the stock market, when you have the stock market get some news, instantly, literally instantly, the moment Jerome Powell says something or the president says something, the stock market reacts in a good way, in a bad way, whatever. It's just instant. But real estate is very slow at reacting because there needs to be a lot of people involved, and it needs to change the inventory. And then eventually the interest rates start changing, and eventually people start making different buying decisions. But let me tell you a few things that I'm seeing right now that is kind of indicating to me that for, 2024 and part of 2025, we're still going to have prices appreciate. And then at the end of 2025 and into 2026, we're going to have the beginning, the first year of our 4-year down cycle. Okay. First and foremost, let's just start with the big one, which is interest rates, okay? Interest rates are not expected to come down drastically. They're expected to come down in September. They might even come down a little bit in July when FOMC meeting happens, but really we're expecting September and then maybe in November. Now, if that happens, if we get one in July, September, and November, then that's kind of like a ploy by the people in power right now to make it seem like they're doing really good and get some votes on the table for their president, right? And even if they do that, I think that it's not going to make a very big difference on the demand, because people are actually waiting for that next president. A lot of people, listen, I'm in real estate. I'm a real estate salesperson in Sarasota, Florida. And by the way, I'm on Bay Island Park right now. Awesome place here. I love this whole island. Mote Marine Laboratory actually is right behind me here, right beside me. Anyway, if you want to reach out, if you want to talk about real estate, my contact info is below. But when the interest rates are going to fall, they're only going to make a slight impact right now because people are still waiting to see who the next president is. See, the president is such a big factor for people's mindset. Whether the president can make big changes or not is a different conversation. The president, being a new person, is going to inspire people, whether it's Republican or Democrat. It makes no difference, because it might be Democrats or Republicans that get inspired to go and buy something or just invest into their business or whatever. So even if they cut the rate 3 times this year and it's like 6.5 by the end of the year, I think people are still going to wait for the election. And mind you, a lot of the people that might be voting right now have no effect with the interest rate anyway, because they're illegal immigrants. We have had over 10 million illegal immigrants cross the border, and right now, for some reason, they can vote. I don't get it. Listen, this is politics. I don't want to get into politics. I want to talk about how it affects real estate, because this is Florida Real Estate TV. This is the show. So that's the first big one, is interest rates. Now, what else could cause the prices to change, whether they go up or down? And that one would be our inventory. Now, as people can't sell their home, they're going to lower the price. That's just what happens. In fact, I have a listing right now that just fell out of contract that, the buyers backed out for whatever reason they had. And we're going to have a conversation about possibly dropping the price again, because in the last 2.5 weeks that we've been under contract, a whole bunch of properties in that neighborhood fell in price. They cut the price. It's not like 50% or anything, but 10,000 here, 15,000 there, starts adding up, okay? And this is all about the inventory, the competition that you have as a seller. And some people have to sell. Like my client has to sell. He will sell that property. And since we listed, we now have a lot more competitors on the market that he has to compete with. So unfortunately for him, he didn't cut the price fast enough and high enough, meaning like, down enough. To get a contract where a buyer is actually going to come through with it. This is our second contract that fell out of contract already. But inventory is going up. Now, inventory is very market dependent, whereas interest rates are nationwide. It's like when more homes hit the market, it's for my particular area. It's not necessarily for Colorado or Atlanta, Georgia, or something like that. So you have to be paying attention to your area. Some places are actually growing and how much inventory they have, and some are shrinking, and the prices are going up in those areas. So you really have to pay attention to that local component of it. But nationally, inventory is rising, and in Florida, it is definitely rising. Some would say skyrocketing, okay? But I think the skyrocket has already kind of happened, and now it's just increasing slowly, okay? But over the last 6 months, we did have quite a bit of homes hit the market, especially on the west coast of Florida, which is where I am, and that's like all the way down, all the way up almost. And the thing about inventories is it takes a long time for it to grow. It doesn't grow overnight. It really does take a long time. Now, it did shrink overnight when COVID happened and interest rates were cut real sharply. Well, people jumped and they seized the opportunities, they made an offer, and they bought houses, and inventory shrunk in half over like a 1 month time frame, and then continually went down, where we in Sarasota, we ended up having a 7-day supply of inventory, which is ridiculous. It's nothing. That's like no houses available for people to buy or look at even. And by the way, if you've never been to Florida, I just want to show you that this is a banyan tree. I love these trees. They are so neat. They just grow these, you know, vines that come down to the ground, and sometimes they're just like hanging like this one, and eventually this one will come and go all the way to the ground, and eventually it becomes an awesome tree. And they're very cool climbing trees. So if you're a climber, if you got kids, I'm not, but my kids are, well, these are great trees to come and check out. They're in a lot of parks in the state. Anyway, by 2025 and at the end of 2025, I'm pretty sure that we're not going to have rates being cut. Therefore, our inventory will be going up, and it will be higher than it is today. Let's just call it 50% higher over 1 year. 50% more homes is a drastic increase. And when you're looking at the reaction on what people are going to do when they see all these homes for sale, a lot of people are going to wait, and they're going to think, oh, it's getting worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse. And yeah, it's true. That means it was getting worse. But there's going to be a tipping point where prices are going to stop going down due to all the competition, and eventually they're going to start going up, or at least stagnating and staying put in a particular place. But we can expect this. As the inventory keeps going up, the prices theoretically should be coming down. And you know, people always say, watch out for a crash, watch out for a crash, but sometimes a crash is just disguised as a slowdown. It's not actually like an actual crash, you know? So people think, oh, 50% off, 30% off. Listen, just because it went down 5%, that could be the actual crash. So you never know how low it's gonna go. If you don't have a home that you own, just go buy one. Please, just go buy one. Now, another factor that's going to contribute to a market crash is general consumer sentiment. You have to think about it in a way of feeling. How you feel about the consumer sentiment. Right now, consumer sentiment is low, meaning people don't think that we're going into a booming economy. Nobody thinks this. Even the people that are doing good are just like riding the wave and happy they're there. But no one is thinking that everything is going to get better. We need a new president, or we need a new administration, or we need whatever, low interest rates. You know, everyone's always saying we need something different before it can get better. Well, maybe that's true. I don't know, right? This is not a political conversation. This is really about the sentiment of the people, and do people feel good? And you know, in 2021, people felt good. Everyone was making money. Businesses were borrowing at really low interest rates. People were buying houses at really low interest rates. People were buying cars at really low interest rates. They weren't happy about the price of the car, and they weren't happy about the price of the house. I will say that. But they were happy overall because their stock market portfolio was blowing up. The crypto kids were getting rich, and you know, overall, it was feeling really good compared to right now. But what I'm really afraid of is, regardless of what happens with our inventory, with our interest rates, with our consumer sentiment, I'm afraid that there's not much that's going to be able to get done relatively quickly, which will begin a market crash or a correction, whatever you want to call it. And I'm saying this to say that our prices won't necessarily drop like to the floor, but our prices will be affected. And a lot of people who bought recently in the last 2 years, they won't be able to sell. They're going to have to lose their home or just keep it, right? They're not going to be able to sell and actually profit and pay their agents. We might actually have a market crash, and this market crash might not look like the 2008 crash where things fell 50% in my area. 50, that's awesome. That's crazy. I mean, in a sense, I would love that so that I could buy more houses. But when we do get an administration that makes changes to the interest rates, it's not necessarily all good, because prices aren't going to crash, that's for sure. They might actually skyrocket again. If we go down to a 3%, 4% interest rate, our home prices might skyrocket again, but everything else will too. All the materials, all the labor, all the eggs, and everything you buy and eat, the gas, the cars, everything. So do we want that? Do we want major inflation to happen? I don't. This is currently what we're dealing with because of the low interest rates we had in 2021. And we have to fix it somehow. But how do you fix it without lowering the interest rates? Because when you lower the interest rates, businesses borrow and they create jobs, and that helps the economy. So they're in a predicament, and I think it's going to take a lot more than 1 year to fix it. I think it's going to take about 3, 4, maybe 5 years to figure out a system that's going to actually help boost the economy. We need to first go through pain before we can get to the gain. So sure, we'll get a new president. Sure, we'll lower interest rates temporarily at the end of this year, but the pain is going to continue, and there's just going to be some people that bought some properties, not many, and then there's going to be interest rates going back up because it will not solve our inflation issue. It will not bring us down to that magic 2% inflation that Jerome Powell wants, and he's the Fed chairman. So it's not going to happen that quick. That's my prediction. The more data I read, the more I see that we're in for a market crash. And it's going to start in 2 years from now, or 1.5 years from now, in 2026. Let's see if this video ages well.